That's very.
Yeah, yeah, you heard me right, and I'll stand by it. Yeah. Yep. Yes, I am an Aaron Rodgers hater.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All trustees are present. First on our agenda is to approve a memorandum of agreement with the Scotia Professional Firefighters.
I'll make a motion to approve an MOA with the Scotia Professional Firefighters Association in regard to first line supervisors training expenses incurred in the years 2023 and 2024 in the amount of $1,250.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next is a evidence room storage system purchase.
I'd like to make a motion to, hold on, I lost it. Make a motion to authorize the purchase of an evidence storage room system to be purchased with grant funding.
Second.
Any questions? For Adam on this? No?
I'm assuming this is, the storage, this will actually, being covered by grant funding and stuff that we won't need to have come out through FF&E for the municipal facilities project.
Correct, and it will be better than the best possible system to maximize the space. Mobile track system, high density storage. Here, fantastic. No one will ever see it though.
That's right. Maybe we could be there when they install it.
Yeah,
We can't get a tour after the fact, though?
we can be sure before the deadline's in.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. This next one does. Number 4,
Susan,
Yeah.
I just want to say, the way I wrote this one, it authorizes Adam to go forward and make the purchase as opposed to him coming back, because there, you don't have the,
I have 2 quotes and it's different, like, it would be different inventory of what I'm getting. But I have $10,000 in the grant dedicated to less lethal weapon system. So I'm just, as long as I keep it under $10,000, that's okay. I'm just-
Gotcha. So we're authorizing not to exceed.
right?
Basically.
And so he can move forward with that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
you wanna,
I got you.
Justin, you just wanna put a modification in there?
It's in there.
It's in there.
It's in there, okay, never mind.
What-
Now, next one is the pepper ball.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the purchase of pepper ball launchers to be purchased with grant.
At a price not to exceed $10,000.
At a price not to exceed $10,000.
Thank you.
I didn't know if that was for the previous one.
That's really fun.
I caught it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. This is a very interesting one, I thought, pepper ball launcher.
Less lethal.
All part of non-lethal.
Yes. Next is, to authorize the mayor to sign a lease agreement.
I'll make a motion authorizing the mayor to sign a lease agreement with Celco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless regarding an antenna on Village Hall. And we got to do yours, sorry.
Any questions on this? They'll be here next week moving equipment over. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I'm gonna jump to a new business item and then go back to the conversation on special event. I have a. Did you get this?
Like, you want me to just?
Yes.
So this
It's the
is,
same one you said.
for an agreement with National Grid to install a new 50-foot pole, and a 3-phase transformer at 148 Mohawk Avenue. And the amount of $1,604. I don't know much about the whole project, but
Yeah, so.
And it'll be paid out of the municipal project fund.
Is that already budgeted in the, that's included in sort of the,
It's in the municipal.
it's in municipal budget, yeah. Or I can I
budget.
just so moved that? So moved.
Okay, so,
Need a second before discussion.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. This is, we just said part of the municipal project. This is necessary to be able to move the single line into the building. This will also allow us to put the Verizon tower system on its own separate, meter. Any other questions on this? Trustee Solo Truck was at the meeting when we heard about this as well today, so.
Yeah, it's surprising how inexpensive it is, but
Yeah, right. That seems really not a lot of money, but hey.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next, I'll turn it over to trustee Brown and trustee Cook to talk about the special events.
Yes, did folks get a copy of this yet? Okay, so, and Justin, feel free to jump in anytime here. So Justin and I met and spent quite a bit of time developing this document. We tried to strike the balance based on all of our discussions in the past about what would each of these options look like for the different ways that events occur in the village, from simple ones where, maybe somebody's asking for a road closure to the much more complex ones where there might be, money changing hands and otherwise. So if you look through the document, that's how we've formatted it as here's what would distinguish these different type of events from one another, and then a course of action and kind of requirements under each thing. We did it in terms of a guidance document because some of this stuff we have to make some tweaks to codes and other things. But at least this would serve as like the guiding document, the sort of the policy kind of around this stuff. So Justin and I have obviously seen it and edited it, so as the mayor. So I guess if anybody else has a question, Justin, what did I miss?
Well, I think it's important just to kind of point out that it's the three different event types it's broken into are independent events. These are done by business community organizations and things like that. That aren't necessarily village sponsored or village run. Examples of that would be things like the Dutch Fair, or if the Bergendal Fire Department ever does a carnival again. These are and private entities that do need to go through permitting process, and we kind of clarify that there could be expenses associated with that to help cover village costs. Then there's village sponsor events. These are also again put on by private entities. However, by motion of the board may opt to sponsor one of these private events. And the sponsorship could be in the form of in-kind services, waived fees, things along that nature. And examples of that would be things like the Freedom Park Summer Concerts. Not directly put on by the village, but special events that occur in the village where we may need to provide obviously some resources. Then the village run events, in my mind, are the classic four that we have: the Holiday in the Ave, the car show, the fireworks, as well as the Memorial Day parade. And this document spells out, that these are run by citizen committees appointed by this board, adding clarification that sponsorships need to be secured. Events need to be budget neutral. Budgets and oversight reports need to be submitted to the village for oversight. So it also, what's important though with the village run special events, we put in some flexibility of what, instead of having it be done by a all volunteer committee, the village board could decide to enter into a contract with a paid fee that once again is budget neutral, to plan and execute the event. And that could be any other legal business, but it would still be a village run event, and that entity would be acting on behalf of the village.
So I had one comment that didn't make it. The other rest did, and that was for the independent events. I think that the organizers should submit an application to the village, not contact the clerk's office for information, because that's not the person who would have the information
An
about
application for what? Like,
an application to run an independent event.
so do we want to then have to create an application, I guess is the question?
Or to contact the special events coordinator.
Right, I think the reason why it's, contact the village clerk is obviously something like the Dutch
Did we
Fair,
say
for
or
example, takes place on private property.
They don't need,
They don't need a permit, they
Right.
don't need anything.
And
But, I noticed there is parking restrictions and things like that. That would be an example where they do need parking restrictions, because of the number of people coming there. They need to know to
Right.
let the village be aware that
Right.
there is an event happening that could have implications for traffic.
I followed that. I just didn't want to have questions coming in the clerk's office about.
Correct.
the
It's the
special-
same thing like with the village-wide garage sale.
Right,
If a group of individuals want to do a village-wide garage sale, they just need to give notice
they can.
that they're doing it.
Right.
So, again, if there's any implications on traffic or.
I can add a note in there to say, or
Yeah,
to contact the liaison.
that makes sense.
if I could ask a couple questions about the money.
Mhm.
Explain to me the special events account.
Well, so I know we
We
don't
don't
have,
need to get into that right now, like the
Right.
weeds of it.
so we tried to describe it in a way that would make sense for people without getting in the weeds of the fact that it's not a special account, it's just accounted for
Okay.
within our.
Okay,
So
I
I
understand.
guess if you have better language for that,
No.
I'm
I
happy to
understand.
put like, we didn't want to be like, the village will
Yeah,
hold the
that's
thought, like, we wanted
No,
to
I
say
get it.
like, we wanted to be clear with people that like, we are tracking that
But we're
separately.
not gonna keep a separate account.
Correct,
that old account.
correct.
Yeah.
So just, that old, any old accounts, they're not, it's not village money,
Yeah.
therefore whoever's on that account.
Yep.
You know, but I think how we've been doing the fireworks.
Yeah.
Is kind of like the method to go for each
Yep.
event.
Yep.
You know, and therefore if there is surpluses, you know, we at least know.
I keep track of it and then amend the budget the following year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
So we're all good. Bertie, did you-
Can I-
Well, so that
sorry.
money will go into a village account.
Correct.
It all goes through the village fund,
Right. So
donations.
there's not. What's the role of the treasurer vis-a-vis you? That's my question.
Say it again.
So it mentions an event, I think, maybe not, event.
Yeah. It says the treasurer will work with the clerk's office on, yes.
All right,
So
so
this
just,
is,
so whatever Maria, you know,
Is that Maria's
because
treasure?
Maria's gonna be responsible.
Correct.
In the past, like, they've delivered like donation forms to me.
Yeah.
And I've collected the donation forms or provided me with invoices of expenses that they anticipate for the event.
I mean, as long as you're comfortable. with
Yeah.
what-
State treasurer here meant the appointed treasurer.
Yeah, that's correct.
so,
Yes.
you know, the idea is that each of these event committees that gets appointed by the board. The idea is that there would be a chair, there'd be, you know, and I believe it was a treasurer and a secretary. The secretary would be responsible for communication and things like that. The idea of this is because we do not have a special events department, we do not have special events staff, that each planning committee has within it a team of people that can do some of the administrative functions. So what, in the case of the treasurer, what the treasurer would be doing is making sure that donations and expenses are organized, accepted, and then turned over to the village clerks in
Fully
an
agreed.
organized fashion.
Right.
For easy payment.
I just was making sure that when we said treasurer, we meant the appointed treasurer by
Yes.
George.
I just, I'm not a smart man, but I just want to dumb it down a little bit in the sense that independent events, so we're talking about like the block parties.
Yep.
Correct.
That are gonna take village resources to drop off, set up, and monitor road closures.
If those are events that are happening in the village, it may or may not require village services. But we don't, a person who's looking at this for the first time and wants, you know, say, civic organization A wants to hold, you know, a carnival, and it starts out for year one as like a really small carnival in their parking lot, doesn't necessarily require any village resources whatsoever. But over time, that independent event may grow
Right,
and
but
spill out.
I'm just trying to put structure around what we do today and what will happen next year, this year. So village business, village resident A requests a block party, which requires a village employee time to set up sawhorses and block a road. Depending on which road it is, it will affect public transportation. May or may not, right? But we need to account for that anyways. If they want to shut down Fifth Street, that's going to affect CDTA bus routes. So that's a notification and a process that needs to be accounted for.
We have an application for block parties.
So, okay, so are we wrapping that into this special event process?
Right, so we were trying
Definition.
to keep this as basic as possible so that we're not inundating people with information. So in your example,
Mhm.
somebody's gonna do one of those
Independent
events, right? They're gonna reach out to either the clerk's office or the special events
Okay.
liaison and say, hey, we wanna have a block party, we wanna do this, right?
Okay.
So
They'll
either
fill out the
Maria or
application
I would say,
for this.
here's the stuff you need to fill out
Okay.
to do that.
Mhm.
And any other information they need.
Well, I think that's defining a difference from the last year. There was never any fee for village staff.
Well, there still may not be.
Yeah, there still may not be.
Well, they've only like, in traditionally block parties, like they drop off the barricades, right? And then pick them up the following
Yeah.
During regular hours.
regular
Right.
hours.
2 hours and then you are notified of there's an event going on here.
I send
Take
the
a look.
block party application to each of the department
Yeah.
heads before the board approves it, and they provide input.
Right. So the
That's all I'm
idea
trying to
here,
do is
so the
provide-
idea here would be that, to Justin's point, somebody wants to have a new event and they think, oh, it's going to be a small thing. We're only asking for this. They reach out to me or they reach out to Maria and we say, okay, here's the application.
Liaison or.
Liaison, right, so-
Or a coordinator,
Yeah.
we hopefully get somebody to do that for us.
Again, we can tweak this if we have somebody who
No,
does it,
I-
but for now it's me and Maria.
Mhm.
And so that person says like, oh yeah, this is what we intend to do, right? And Maria and I are like, it sounds a little bigger than a block party. We've
Right.
got to look at a different model.
The
here
first
for
fly
this.
extravaganza. We're gonna
Right,
set
so
that
now
up.
if we are like, you know what, that sounds like, or again, the application goes to the department heads. And let's say, Adam or Ryan says, boy, this is like gonna take a lot of time and effort. This is beyond the scope of a regular block party. That means that as liaison, that's then the liaison's role to say to those people, hey, look, this is based on the way you've designed this. This is gonna require a lot more village resources than
Yeah.
expected. We gotta look at a different model here.
Like the
So,
Lions 5K.
Correct.
We have to put an officer there.
Correct, right. So now that's, okay, we need you to, now again, we may decide we're gonna do that as an in-kind thing, but that's gonna be for us to decide. So as liaison, I would bring that to the board and say, hey, there's a request by Lions to do this. It's gonna require, I talked to Adam. Adam says it's gonna require an additional officer. What do we want to do? Do we want to just donate that time in kind? Do we want to say to them, hey, it's gonna, so the idea would not, trust me when I say that you can imagine if Trustee Cook and I sit down to try to hammer something out, our default is probably going to be to put way too much information.
And
We deliberately tried to not do that here and refer people to the right pathways where they would get that information.
so the next event, the larger events come up is like the Memorial Day Parade.
so that would fall under as a village run event, because that is something historically that the village has run, in some capacity. Again,
No, those shouldn't
looking
be
back may not necessarily be perfect, because it's been kind of like a hodgepodge. But, in our minds, those four events, Memorial Day, car show, fireworks, and Holiday in the Ave are the four village run events. And, so we have a village Memorial Day planning. And that's been working quite well. And in fact, that's one of the village run special events that the clerk's office has been involved with from day one, with
Sure.
processing, stuff. So I think that's, an example of, say, a village sponsored event could end up being the car show.
Right.
So like, for example, if the Elks decide that they don't want it to be a village run event, that the Elks want to do it, and they take care of all aspects of event planning, then, we could simply say that this will be a village sponsored event.
Yep.
At that point, it moves out of village run events.
Yep.
And into the Elks' hands, knowing that there actually is a pathway for village sponsorship in a way that is completely and totally okay with the New York State Controller's Office.
These were
The
actually
one part that is left out of this, that needs to be addressed with this is like that special event vendor
Yes,
permit, which I can get to later on
Yeah,
as
that
part of
needs
this.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying. If we're providing definition for this, I feel like we should try and put some guidance together so we don't have the confusion that we had going forward. So like, again, you mentioned the car show, is that run by the Lions? Is the Lions responsible for it? And they have traditionally benefited from
so
it.
once we finalize this, then the next step would be for me to reach out to the organizer from the Elks and say,
Sorry, not the Lions.
the Elks, and say,
Yeah, same.
and say, predator and prey, and say, hey, look, we've tweaked the way special events are run in the village. So we need to have a conversation. I'll have a conversation with them and say, we've got these options. What do you want to do here? Because if it's going to be a village run event, then we have to designate a chair of treasurer and secretary. And if the Elks are just going to run it, then we just have to say, okay, my role as liaison is you tell us what you need.
And they handle all the money?
They handle all the money,
And
they
we
handle,
Can sponsor it like
We-
Oktoberfest or
yeah,
something?
exactly. And then we would say, look, then we would decide either how much money they owe us or if we're gonna
In kind.
donate it in kind.
Right.
And that,
Yeah. You and George are doing a lot of caveats.
Oh, it's not a special account, we're just tracking it.
Mhm.
Correct.
Would there ever be a situation where there could be surplus?
absolutely.
And
Yes.
what, and what would we do with that money if it's,
So that's in there under, sorry. There's basically a thing where like, yeah, I think we put it in, yeah,
And then the next year, I modify the budget of that line for the amount of donations that exceeded the expenses.
It's the capability.
right.
I don't just roll it into like the general fund.
so would it have its own money?
So we,
It's like
Justin and I,
Celebrations and then
Yeah.
fireworks is 4,100. I could make like the parade 4,200.
Okay, and then, so the other question I had is, notice. There a notice requirement here in terms of like, how far in advance?
So all that is currently spelled out in existing code, because again, we have mass gathering permit, there's, a park permit, if it's an event in the park. There's already established process, which is why honestly, I think it's important for us, the independent event is just kind of like, that's not our focus, right?
that's right.
We're not focused on getting involved or interjecting village time or resources into events that are not sponsored or run.
Mhm.
So we just need to put that in the booklet. So in case someone has a new idea, so say someone comes to a village meeting and is like, I want to do Porch Fest. And it might be Keith Brown and Justin Cook. And
Stealing your.
and if Porch Fest, comes to Scotia and we want it to be a special event, we have to know where to go somewhere to be like, can Porch Fest happen? What paperwork do we need to fill out? Well, then that is a simple navigation thing. It's like, okay, well, you're gonna require a mass gathering permit because you could have over 500 people roaming through the village, going porch to porch, listening to live music. You're gonna, and it's also happening in public rights of way. So that is just simply, you fill out a mass gathering permit, give us notice according to that mass gathering permit. You get, there's no vendors involved in that because that's all happening now on private property too. So, so there's that element. Now, if it's something where the village board hears this and is like, Porch Fest sounds kind of cool and Cook and Brown LLC is a registered business, and they have insurance, they have a legitimate, tax ID, and they have, governance structure. The village board may say, this sounds like a really cool event, let's sponsor. So instead of now us, paying village police department, overtime, the village board's contribution to Porch Fest could be covering the costs, of that overtime officer. I see an example of a independent event that could be coming, in the near future, is something like a Pride Festival, Scotia Glenville Pride. Not wanting to do, or they want to do something in a park. That could start out as an independent event that, in the future, the village may decide, we want to have that as a village sponsored event. I look at on the lens of how we ended up with a fireworks show, right? If we had this structure in place, the fireworks may never have had to have become a village run event.
It's true.
Because we could have gone to, Jumping Jacks could have come to us. And because we now have the everything in place, and we could have adopted it as a village special event, allowed Jumping Jacks to continue to do what it's doing with Freedom Park. And, we're there providing, in-kind sponsorship of, the costs of services.
Yeah, and I think one thing to make a note of is this independent events. It takes us out of the question, what Saturday can I have my craft fair? It's your decision. It's an independent event.
Right. The,
You can have.
the experience that I had this year with Holiday on the Ave really galvanized some of this stuff because like there were, you know, there were times where the lack of clarity about roles was problematic. And that, you know, there were times where I think people were expecting like me to like do work on the event. And I was like, I can't do that. That's not my role. Like I can't go find sponsors. I can't do this. And so like one of the concerns Justin and I talked about when we were doing this was like, how do we craft this in a way that like really establishes what the village's role is in these events so that it's really clear to people who are doing the events, like if we approve you as chair, secretary, and treasurer, the event is yours. That's your event. Now, if it's a village-run event that we decide is high value and nobody has stepped up to do it, it very well may be that Captain Fireworks is
Yeah, and I think in fairness to the people,
Is-
they've
is-
done it
but
one
it's-
way.
formally, again, if we had had this in place last year, it might be different this year, but it would be like Justin Cook would be approved as chair of the fireworks planning committee.
Or, you know, because let's be honest, volunteerism is hard to find
Yeah.
in 2026. You know, village-run special events, we give ourselves the ability to say, all right, so community, no one wants to step up to run Holiday in the Ave next year. So say that's a hypothetical. And we find ourselves in a position where it's Holiday in the Ave is not happening
Mhm.
because there is no planning committee and the village does not have a special events team. We could find and enter into a contract with a business to run that event on behalf of the village with the understanding that that person submits a proposal
Yep.
to the village showing that this event will be budget neutral, and they show where they're going to get revenue. And then they plan and implement all aspects of the event, including their fee comes out of essentially the amount they raise.
Mhm.
You know, but they're doing it on behalf of the village. So we're able to kind of take the money in, provide the financial oversight and things like that. So this provides a level of flexibility that I don't think we've had when it was just, you know, a non-incorporated village special events committee doing things on behalf of.
Trustee Gray, did you see that bullet that highlights the piece about how if there's money in the account that people can request access to it by board vote?
I just wanted to thank Trustee Brown and Trustee Cook, who did a great job. And it's amazing that it's only 2 pages on quarter. Trustee.
It was not easy for us.
Under other considerations, I'd like to just take out the language of current Schenectady County food safety regulations are available from the village and on Schenectady County. I think I'll just reference to Schenectady
I
County.
love that, because I know in the past you guys have given stuff out to people. so
Yeah, I don't wanna.
We'll just pull it right out.
Yeah.
Great, I love that.
Technically all available online.
It really is.
Exactly.
have it on
Because
good
there's
authority.
something that says, do I need a vendor permit? Or do I need a health permit? You have.
Right.
And then.
It's all up there.
Yeah, I just think maybe we try and be a little bit proactive this year in the sense that reach out to the previous people who have run these things and be like, hey, can we talk about this for a minute?
Yeah, I'm going to either bring Trustee Brown or Trustee Cook with me, for example, for the Elks
Yeah.
conversation.
So I'll make those, that's one change though, because we did determine that there was the piece that was mentioned about the clerk's office, that bullet does say clerk's office or
Yeah.
liaison. So we're good on that, right?
Can we
So the-
notice though, according to the codes? Village disclosure?
Sorry, can we what?
Notice required set forth. Code.
Well, I think what we would say is this does not replace.
There really isn't a notice of event though, unless it's a mass gathering, like there's notice for vendor permits. But
Well, I meant if somebody comes in, right, oh, I wanna do something. A month
it would
ago.
just have to be reasonable, but I don't know.
So again, if someone comes in and wants to do something, it all depends, is it on public or private property?
Right.
If someone's coming in and doing something on private property and it's not a mass gathering permit,
Right.
there's actually no need or requirement for the Village of Scotia to regulate or be involved or impede.
Right.
However, if that event spills out into the right of way or into the road, then that's
Right.
when they need to have notice to, through the proper existing channels on what to do to get the road closures and stuff like that.
So to Trustee Gray's point though, so you and I went down a bit of that rabbit hole and we decided that that last bullet in other considerations was our catch-all for that, Trustee Gray. So like, if somebody came to us and said, we want to do this event and it's in 2 weeks, we would say, no.
I like
No.
that. I think that.
We would just say, that's not enough time to pull together what we need to do on the service level. No, we're just not doing it.
And I think anyone who's serious
No.
about putting a special event together, whether it be a professional business or a civic organization, or even a neighbor, like, they're not, they're planning these things out a year in advance, because, frankly, putting on any event's not cheap.
Right.
So.
All right, so I'll make
here's what
that, I'll make that tweak.
Yeah.
I'll send it back out to everybody.
We will,
Oh.
An event like Woodstock or like the Lions 5K, are we gonna use
Pedal, run, but yeah.
like are they gonna have to go through the special events process?
They-
Well,
Or are
they
we gonna
still need
keep-
the park one.
They would still need to go through, so they would still need to go through the permitting process and stuff. So the question is like, if that clearly spills over from a private event into, like, that's not a private event. That's road closures. It's a whole thing, right? So I would argue that that's the second option. That is somebody who's putting the event on, right? We can say, okay, they're putting the event on. They should be coordinating with the liaison. So I think once we implement this, anytime anybody catches wind of,
Any larger,
somebody puts in an application for the park and you're like, ooh, this sounds like it should be, just flag it, send it to me, refer the person to me. Exactly.
Gotta have
Yep.
5 or 6 last
Yeah.
year.
But part of the goal here is like, sometimes we find out about that stuff and it's like too late to do stuff we would want to do about it. Like, oh, maybe we could wrap this in, maybe we could promote this, maybe we could whatever. Sometimes it's like, it just happens too last minute. What we're trying to do is like proactively, now there's going to be a transition here, but to Trustee Solartruck's point, like, we're going to proactively reach out once this is finalized to all the people who currently are involved in these events to say, look, moving forward, this is the way it is. And then ideally we can reach out to those people, and I'm happy to do this, to say like, oh, hey, are you folks thinking about doing the regatta again? Are you thinking about doing the Wolfstock thing again, right? Like, if so, we've got these procedures in place. Let me know.
Yeah, and that's also, it's important, I think, for things like the regatta,
That flew off in the past
Yeah.
8 years.
Right.
Longer, yeah.
And honestly, we should be promoting it, talking about it. It should be on the sign.
and, not for nothing, like, imagine, the bid, knowing that the regatta's coming to town, perhaps they may wanna, put up banners, welcome regatta, or find some way to connect them too, like, events can also be business drivers, traffic drivers. And, it's also things that for us as a Village of Scotia, it does build a sense of vibrancy. The thing that we also run into with, things like the regatta is, food truck vendors may start just like
Trying to show up.
showing up and, so they, the individuals need to know the process by which, to provide like, food or concession. Again, delineating the difference between public property and private property, right? That's like, it's a really tricky thing. Like, you can't really impose restrictions on jumping jacks because they own the property, they have their food service establishment. But you know what, if this regatta comes with a food truck that they try to put next to the sewer pump station, in a public right of way. That's gonna require a village permit. So I don't wanna say this is not gonna solve everything for like these independent events. But what it will do is actually force us as a village board to have a conversation.
Right.
With, if the regatta gets any bigger than this, and it requires any additional labor or support, some of that, they may need the fee, or they may have to actually cover some of those costs. Like when I worked for the Albany Symphony and we did some, events, I think one was in Rockport, and we literally were bringing 1,500 people to a park that barely gets 250 people. The village of Rockport was like, yeah, you guys have to pay a little extra you have to pay security, because they had to bring in overtime costs. Again, that's part of the cost of doing business. So they need to now do more fundraising to get more sponsorships to help cover those costs.
Yeah, the Rochester Regatta, we had to pay for the police to be there, we had to pay for the fire boats to be on
Correct.
the water.
Now, say we find incredible value and benefit of this regatta being in the village of Scotia, and they're now talking about moving the regatta to the village of Waterford. We may decide, the board, whether it's us or a different board, could say, you know what, why don't we sponsor?
Yeah, I want to
this?
keep this here, yeah.
We want to keep this here, so we are going to adopt this as a village sponsored event, and we'll figure out a way to cover the cost.
Right.
So I would recommend make the minor changes you did. We'll get it out in the agenda for our next meeting, and we'll accept this as our special events.
Did you
Everybody
both get a
okay with
copy
that?
of it? It should be in the
It's
one.
on the OneDrive.
Yeah. So if you have any feedback in between, just shoot it over to me.
So this will be added to the agenda.
So section 2 of this is the village special events vendor permit. That right now, the most cumbersome part of everything is right now our vendor permit process, and we've seen it with Woodstock. I experienced it with the fireworks, and our current permit process was designed and specifically implemented for door-to-door transient vendors. Special event vendor permits in most municipalities consist of, you are a legitimate business with a business profile in New York State. And when you, through that application, because you're applying as a incorporated business, it's a legitimate incorporated business. You then apply, the owner of the company, the principal is typically the one who puts their license forward, not every single employee.
So I'm gonna make a recommendation. You two put together a special permit.
I did this 8.5 months
I know,
ago.
we
and it's
already
been
have it.
ignored.
Well,
So
we're
we
not,
have it.
so we will put that on our work agenda for our next meeting. And then we will
Why
vote
can't you
on
just
it.
take what I put, comment on it via email? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't feel comfortable with what I wrote going into village code. Have Lydia look at it and we vote on it on Tuesday. Or Wednesday, next Wednesday.
Can you bump it up to the top of our email?
Bump it up to everybody's top.
I don't know if there's gonna be anything to vote on,
But there are some changes to
consensus,
code.
because then we're gonna.
So this is, what this is doing is creating a separate permit under our vendor permit that allows, businesses that in village run events, allows businesses to apply for a vendor permit with their license,
You
their
already found it?
insurance, and they pay a fee, and the fee is set by the planning committee, and adopted by the board in our annual fee
It
schedule.
sounds more
What
complicated.
about an individual that doesn't have a business?
So that's where, again, a neighborhood business, they're putting forward their social security number, there's still gonna be a fee. So whether or not you run a background check on an individual,
No, I mean like insurance and.
then they have to have insurance. We live in 2025 where,
Yeah, just
I
as
mean,
long as we outline everything.
A business doesn't have to be incorporated or have an LLC, you could be like a PA,
Right.
you could just be.
Yeah, a sole proprietor, yeah, but they're applying as a business. What's cumbersome is you're a small business, say a food truck, and you're gonna have 4 employees at this village run special event. You now have to go through and get, 4 licenses sent in for background checks. And then what happens if one of your employees is 15 with working papers and doesn't have a photo ID? So I've never been in I've never been in a special event situation. Running a special event in Albany, Schenectady, 7 other cities going to Buffalo, where every single employee was required to submit a license for that.
Can we keep it that way for the ones that push the carts through the park?
I was gonna say, I think some of that might have come from like, when we had vendors at the parade, and they were all over the place.
I'd actually this is becoming standard, where you don't allow mobile vending at any special event.
Oh,
That it's all
Yeah.
stationary vending because of public safety.
Yeah,
And that's
I
actually
agree.
something that's actually come down because you have mobile vendors, you don't know what's actually in the cart.
I think we should just say no mobile vendors.
And our police support that.
That cuts that whole thing
Then you
out.
don't know who they are, what they got.
We did
They're also the
not-
ones that are annoying that people hate anyway.
Yes.
We did not allow mobile vendors at fireworks and the last 2 years. And when we saw mobile vendors, the police were very helpful in
Yeah.
having them go away. So I would say because again, because you're not allowing mobile transient vendors, they're all at stationary in a 10 by 10 tent, what makes it much easier, and they're paying an increased fee. So if the village did want to do a background check on the individual proprietor, we can do that. But for Woodstock, what the city of Schenectady actually allows, and the city of Albany actually allows, is say you are a nonprofit entity putting on an event, or you're a business putting on an event. You apply for the the vendor permit in the municipality, and then through your vendor permit, you are allowed to essentially subcontract your vendors for your event, which would allow Woodstock the ability to sell vendor spots at Woodstock, and they're only paying the 1 municipal vendor fee. The caveat is they are responsible for 100% of the liability insurance of any vendor that they subcontract. So it's their responsibility to make sure that they're dealing with legitimate vendors. 9 times out of 10, these are nonprofit organizations and businesses that don't want to do business with shady vendors. And these are most of the time people that are within their business network.
So put that at the top of our things, I would say,
I already sent it and
Oh, good, thanks,
I'm
George.
looking back farther to see if I missed the first one, because the one that I sent was from November.
okay, thank you. And then try to get comments, if there are any, to each other by, say, Monday morning, one day.
And the reason why I'm putting a sense of urgency on this is
I know, because we got,
fireworks is how many days away, George?
Yeah, I'll count it but it's more about like, Memorial Day and
Yeah.
Well,
Memorial Day is the next thing.
Traditionally don't allow vendors.
November.
well, there has been the shopping carts running up and down the street every once in a while.
No, we got rid of them. We said no.
Okay. Any other item? I need to go into an exec session for, no, if this is for real estate, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate and personnel.
I'll
Second,
second,
And a particular.
And a
Yes.
particular.
person.
second,
Okay, let me start with the real estate.
hang on,
I'm moving us into exec.
please hold.
Yep.